The mental shift that separates the top 1% from everyone else. Introduction. Why do some people consistently achieve extraordinary results while most remain stuck in cycles of average performance? The answer is not talent. It is not luck. It is not intelligence. It is not even hard work alone. The real difference lies in a series of mental shifts that fundamentally change how a person views responsibility, opportunity, failure, time, and growth. The top 1% think differently. They interpret reality differently. They make decisions differently. And because they think differently, they act differently. This book explores the mental models that separate exceptional performers from everyone else. Each chapter focuses on one crucial mindset shift that changes behavior, identity, and ultimately results. Chapter 1. The day you stop seeing yourself as a victim. Most people spend their lives believing they are products of their circumstances. The top 1% believe they are creators of their circumstances. This single shift changes everything. The victim mindset sounds reasonable. It sounds logical. It often contains elements of truth. The economy is difficult. Competition is intense. Resources are limited. Life can be unfair. All of these things may be true. Yet extraordinary people ask a different question. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" they ask, "What can I do about it?" This shift seems small. In reality, it creates an entirely different life. Victims focus on causes. Leaders focus on solutions. Victims focus on blame. Leaders focus on responsibility. Victims wait for conditions to improve. Leaders improve despite conditions. This does not mean ignoring reality. It means refusing to surrender power. Because the moment responsibility increases, influence increases. And influence creates opportunity. The top 1% understand a difficult truth. You cannot always control what happens. But you can almost always control your response. And your response determines your future. The responsibility advantage. Most people avoid responsibility because responsibility feels heavy. The top performers embrace responsibility because responsibility creates leverage. If something is your responsibility, you can change it. If everything is someone else's fault, you remain powerless. This is why personal responsibility is not a burden. It is freedom. The person who takes ownership gains options. The person who avoids ownership loses them. Every major transformation begins with this realization. Not, "Who is responsible?" but, "What can I do next?" The mirror principle. Top performers spend less time looking out the window. They spend more time looking in the mirror. The window reveals external problems. The mirror reveals internal solutions. Most people become experts at explaining circumstances. Exceptional people become experts at improving themselves. Because they understand a timeless truth. The fastest way to change life is often to change yourself. The turning point. Every successful person eventually experiences a turning point. A moment when excuses stop working. A moment when blame loses value. A moment when responsibility becomes unavoidable. That moment marks the beginning of growth. Because growth starts where excuses end. The core truth. The first mental shift separating the top 1% from everyone else is simple. They stop seeing themselves as victims and start seeing themselves as responsible creators of their future. And once that shift occurs, everything else becomes possible. Chapter 2. Thinking in decades instead of days. One of the biggest differences between the top 1% and everyone else has nothing to do with intelligence, talent, or education. It has to do with time. More specifically, it has to do with how they think about time. Most people think in days. Some think in weeks. A few think in months. The top 1% think in years. And the truly exceptional think in decades. This mental shift changes nearly every decision they make. Because the time horizon you use determines the choices you make today. And today's choices become tomorrow's reality. The tyranny of immediate results. Modern society trains people to think short-term. Everything is instant. Instant messages, instant entertainment, instant shopping, instant information, instant gratification. The brain becomes conditioned to expect immediate rewards. As a result, many people judge decisions based on short-term outcomes. If results do not appear quickly, they assume the effort is not working. If success is delayed, they abandon the process. If progress feels slow, they lose motivation. This creates a dangerous cycle. People repeatedly quit before results arrive, not because the strategy was wrong, because their time horizon was too short. The farmer's mindset. Imagine a farmer planting seeds. The farmer does not dig up the seed every week to check if it is growing. The farmer understands the process. Plant, water, protect, wait. Growth takes time. The farmer trusts the timeline. Most people do the opposite with their goals. They plant a seed on Monday. Expect results by Friday. Become frustrated by Sunday, and quit the following week. The top 1% think more like farmers. They understand that meaningful growth requires patience. They focus on the process and trust the compounding effect of consistency. Why most people overestimate 1 year. Human beings are naturally impatient. We often expect dramatic progress in a short period. We imagine rapid transformation, quick wealth, instant mastery, immediate success. When reality moves slower than expected, disappointment appears. This causes many people to quit. The irony is that most people overestimate what they can achieve in 1 year, but underestimate what they can achieve in 10. Because true growth compounds. And compounding requires time. The compound effect of small actions. A single workout changes little. 1,000 workouts change a life. One book seems insignificant. Hundreds of books transform perspective. Saving a small amount of money feels unimportant. Years of consistent investing create freedom. Small actions appear powerless because their immediate impact is invisible. The top 1% understand something others overlook. Tiny actions repeated for long periods produce extraordinary outcomes. This understanding creates patience. And patience creates consistency. Playing a different game. Most people play short-term games. The top 1% play long-term games. A short-term thinker asks, how can I make money this month? A long-term thinker asks, how can I build value for the next decade? A short-term thinker asks, how can I impress people today? A long-term thinker asks, how can I earn respect over time? A short-term thinker focuses on immediate comfort. A long-term thinker focuses on future freedom. The questions differ. The behaviors differ. The results differ. The invisible years. Every major success story contains invisible years. Years when nobody noticed. Years without recognition. Years without rewards. Years without applause. The public sees the breakthrough. The top performer remembers the preparation. Most people admire results. Few appreciate the years required to create them. The top 1% embrace those years. They understand that mastery is built in obscurity long before it becomes visible. Delayed gratification. One of the strongest predictors of long-term success is the ability to delay gratification. To sacrifice a small reward today for a larger reward tomorrow. This sounds simple. Yet it is increasingly rare. The average person spends. The top performer invests. The average person consumes. The top performer creates. The average person seeks entertainment. The top performer seeks improvement. These differences appear minor, but over decades they create enormous separation. Because delayed gratification compounds. The time horizon test. Imagine two people. Both have the same intelligence. The same opportunities. The same resources. One thinks about the next weekend. The other thinks about the next 10 years. Who makes better decisions? Who develops better habits? Who invests more wisely? Who learns more consistently? Who creates more opportunities? The answer becomes obvious. The longer the time horizon, the better the decisions tend to become. Why patience is a competitive advantage? Patience has become rare. And anything rare becomes valuable. Most people want immediate results, immediate recognition, immediate success. This creates opportunity for those willing to wait. The person willing to remain consistent for years gains an enormous advantage. Because competition disappears, many people start. Few continue. Even fewer persist for a decade. Patience is not passive. It is active persistence. And active persistence is powerful. Thinking beyond yourself. The top 1% often think beyond immediate personal gain. They think about legacy, impact, reputation, contribution, long-term influence. These considerations alter behavior. Because actions are evaluated differently, the question becomes, will this matter in 10 years? Many distractions immediately lose importance. Many meaningful priorities become clearer. The long-term identity. Long-term thinking changes identity. A person begins viewing themselves differently. Not as someone chasing quick wins, but as someone building something meaningful. The focus shifts from outcomes to becoming. From achievements to growth. From temporary success to lasting significance. This identity creates resilience. Because temporary setbacks lose power when viewed through a long-term lens. The 10-year question. A powerful habit used by many high performers is asking, what decision will my future self thank me for? This question changes priorities. It shifts attention away from immediate comfort, toward future benefit, toward lasting value, toward meaningful growth. Many of life's best decisions become obvious when viewed through this lens. Why the top 1% seem different? To outsiders, top performers often appear unusually disciplined, unusually focused, unusually patient. The reality is often simpler. They are operating on a different timeline. While others focus on today's discomfort, they focus on tomorrow's opportunity. While others seek immediate rewards, they seek lasting rewards. While others think about the next few days, they think about the next few decades. That difference shapes everything. The core truth. The second mental shift that separates the top 1% from everyone else is this: they think in decades instead of days. They understand that success is rarely built quickly. It is built gradually. Through consistent action, patient effort, long-term vision, and unwavering commitment to a process that compounds over time. The future belongs to those who can see beyond the present. Because what feels slow today often becomes extraordinary tomorrow. The next discovery. Once a person begins thinking long-term, another transformation occurs. They stop asking how to avoid failure and start asking how to use it. Because the top 1% view failure very differently from everyone else. Where others see proof they should quit, they see information. And that shift changes everything. Chapter 3. Failure is data, not defeat. Few words create more fear than failure. People fear failing in business, failing in relationships, failing in school, failing financially, failing publicly, failing in front of friends, family, and colleagues. For most people, failure feels personal. A failure becomes evidence that something is wrong with them. That they are not talented enough, not smart enough, not capable enough. This interpretation creates hesitation. People avoid risks, avoid challenges, avoid opportunities, not because they lack potential, because they fear what failure might mean. The top 1% make a critical mental shift. They stop seeing failure as an identity and start seeing it as information. For them, failure is data, not defeat. And this single shift creates a massive advantage. The difference between failure and being a failure: most people unconsciously combine two completely different ideas. A failed attempt and personal worth. The distinction matters. Failing at something does not make you a failure. Losing does not make you a loser. Making mistakes does not make you incompetent. Yet many people interpret events as identities. A business fails. They think, I am a failure. A relationship ends. They think, I am not good enough. An opportunity is missed. They think, I always mess things up. The top performers separate outcomes from identity. The event failed, not the person. And because identity remains intact, they keep moving forward. Why failure feels so painful? Human beings naturally seek certainty. Predictability feels safe. Control feels comfortable. Failure threatens both. It exposes weaknesses, creates uncertainty, challenges assumptions. The brain interprets this as danger. This is why failure often triggers emotional reactions. Embarrassment, frustration, disappointment, fear. These emotions are normal. The difference is what happens next. Most people stop. The top 1% study. The scientist mindset. Imagine a scientist conducting an experiment. The experiment produces an unexpected result. Does the scientist cry, quit, and declare themselves worthless? Of course not. They analyze the outcome, adjust the variables, gather information, run another experiment. Top performers think similarly. They approach life with curiosity, not judgment. When something does not work, they ask, what can I learn from this? Instead of, what is wrong with me? This question changes everything. Because curiosity creates growth. Judgment creates paralysis. Every result contains information. Success provides information. Failure provides information. The difference is that failure often provides more. A failed presentation reveals communication weaknesses. A failed business reveals strategic weaknesses. A failed habit reveals system weaknesses. A failed relationship reveals emotional weaknesses. Every setback contains lessons. The problem is that emotions often prevent people from seeing them. The average person experiences failure and focuses on pain. The top performer experiences failure and searches for insight. Why successful people fail more? This idea surprises many people. The most successful individuals often fail more frequently than average people. Not because they are less capable. Because they attempt more. More projects. More opportunities. More experiments. More risks. More challenges. The average person avoids situations where failure is possible. The top performer enters them repeatedly. As a result, failure becomes part of the process, not proof of inadequacy. The hidden cost of avoiding failure. Many people believe avoiding failure protects them. In reality, it often limits them. When failure becomes unacceptable, risk disappears. When risk disappears, growth slows. When growth slows, potential remains unrealized. Avoiding failure may feel safe. But safety often carries a hidden price. The price is opportunity. The opportunities never pursued. The skills never developed. The experiences never gained. The life never lived. Rejection is feedback. One of the most valuable skills in life is learning to handle rejection. Most people take rejection personally. They see it as a judgment. The top 1% often see rejection differently. As feedback. As redirection. As information. A rejected proposal may reveal a weakness. A rejected application may reveal a skill gap. A rejected idea may reveal a market need. The rejection itself is not the end. It is simply part of the learning process. The story of mastery. Every master was once a beginner. Every expert was once inexperienced. Every high performer was once unskilled. What separates them is not perfection. It is persistence. Most people stop after a few failures. Top performers continue. And because they continue, improvement becomes inevitable. Mastery is rarely the result of natural talent alone. It is often the result of surviving enough failures to become exceptional. Why ego blocks growth? One reason failure becomes difficult is ego. Ego wants to appear competent, capable, successful. Failure threatens that image. As a result, many people avoid situations that could expose weaknesses. Unfortunately, weaknesses that remain hidden rarely improve. The top performers prioritize growth over image. They are willing to look inexperienced, willing to make mistakes, willing to learn publicly, because they understand that temporary embarrassment is a small price for long-term growth. The learning loop. The top 1% often operate within a simple cycle: action, feedback, adjustment, action again. This cycle repeats continuously. Most people interrupt the cycle after failure. Top performers complete it. Every iteration creates improvement. Every improvement creates momentum. Every momentum creates results. The process appears simple. Its impact is extraordinary. Emotional resilience. Viewing failure as data creates resilience. Because setbacks lose their power to define identity, the person no longer thinks, "I failed, therefore I am incapable." Instead, they think, "This approach failed. What can I improve?" This perspective transforms adversity. Challenges become lessons. Mistakes become teachers. Obstacles become opportunities for refinement. The situation remains difficult, but it becomes productive. The long-term perspective. Failure feels larger when viewed in isolation. It feels smaller when viewed across decades. A failed project, a failed investment, a failed attempt. Viewed through a 10-year lens, many failures become insignificant. Some even become essential. Many people later discover that their greatest setbacks taught their most valuable lessons. The event felt painful. The lesson proved priceless. Why perfection is dangerous. Perfectionism often disguises itself as excellence. But perfectionism frequently creates inaction. People wait for the perfect plan, the perfect moment, the perfect conditions, the perfect opportunity. The result? Nothing happens. The top 1% prioritize progress over perfection. They understand that action creates learning. Learning creates improvement. Improvement creates excellence. Perfection is not required. Progress is. The question that changes everything when failure occurs: ask one question: what is this trying to teach me? This question shifts attention away from blame, away from shame, away from self-criticism, toward growth, toward understanding, toward improvement. And improvement is where success begins. The competitive advantage. Most people allow failure to stop them. The top 1% allow failure to educate them. This creates a massive advantage. Because every setback becomes useful, every mistake becomes valuable, every challenge contributes to future success. The event remains the same. The interpretation changes, and interpretation determines behavior. The core truth. The third mental shift that separates the top 1% from everyone else is this: they see failure as data, not defeat. They understand that setbacks are not verdicts. They are feedback. Not proof of limitation, but opportunities for learning. The people who grow the most are rarely those who fail the least. They are the ones who learn the fastest. And learning begins the moment failure stops being personal. The next discovery. Once failure loses its power, another shift becomes possible. A shift that changes how a person approaches effort itself. Because most people work for rewards, the top 1% become obsessed with something far more powerful: the process. And that obsession creates results that appear extraordinary from the outside. Chapter 4. Falling in love with the process. Most people are obsessed with results. The promotion, the income, the recognition, the award, the transformation, the achievement. They imagine the destination, dream about the outcome, focus on the reward. And there is nothing inherently wrong with this. Goals matter. Vision matters. Ambition matters. The problem arises when people become so attached to outcomes that they lose interest in the process required to achieve them. This is where the top 1% think differently. They enjoy results, but they become obsessed with the process. And that mental shift changes everything. The outcome trap. Imagine someone who wants to become wealthy. They focus entirely on money. Every decision is evaluated through the lens of immediate financial gain. The outcome becomes an obsession. The problem is that wealth is usually the byproduct of something else. Creating value. Developing skills. Solving problems. Building systems. Serving people. These activities make wealth possible. But the person obsessed only with money often ignores the process. As a result, frustration grows. Because they want the reward without learning to love the work that creates it. Why most people quit? Most people start enthusiastically. A new fitness plan. A new business. A new habit. A new skill. At first, excitement is high. Motivation is abundant. Everything feels possible. Then reality arrives. Progress slows. Challenges appear. Results take longer than expected. The excitement fades. And many people quit. Why? Because they were emotionally attached to the outcome, not the process. When the outcome became delayed, motivation disappeared. The top 1% avoid this trap. They find satisfaction in the daily work itself. The daily game. Top performers often treat improvement like a daily game. They do not wake up asking, "Will I achieve my goal today?" They ask, "Can I execute my process today?" This subtle difference creates enormous stability. Goals may take years. Processes happen today. Outcomes are uncertain. Processes are controllable. Success becomes less dependent on emotion and more dependent on execution. And execution is where progress lives. The athlete's secret. Elite athletes understand this deeply. Championships are won on game day. But championships are built long before game day. During practice, training, recovery, preparation. The athlete who loves only victory will struggle. Because victory is rare. The athlete who loves training can improve every day. And daily improvement eventually creates victory. The same principle applies to life. The people who enjoy the process can sustain effort longer. And sustained effort creates extraordinary results. Why process creates freedom? Outcomes create pressure. Processes create clarity. When people obsess over outcomes, they often become anxious. What if it doesn't work? What if I fail? What if results don't come? The mind becomes trapped in uncertainty. The process offers an escape. Instead of worrying about the future, attention returns to the present. What needs to be done today? What action can be taken now? What step moves the process forward? This focus reduces anxiety and increases effectiveness. The hidden joy of mastery. Most people think success creates satisfaction. In reality, mastery often creates deeper satisfaction. Mastery comes from improvement, learning, growth, refinement. The process itself becomes rewarding. A musician enjoys practicing. A writer enjoys writing. A craftsman enjoys building. An entrepreneur enjoys solving problems. The work becomes meaningful. Not because it guarantees rewards. Because growth itself becomes rewarding. Why motivation becomes less important? People constantly search for motivation. The top 1% rely on something stronger. Commitment to the process. Motivation is emotional. Processes are structural. Motivation comes and goes. Processes remain. A person who depends on motivation becomes inconsistent. A person committed to a process continues regardless of mood. This consistency creates a massive advantage over time. Because success rarely belongs to the most motivated. It often belongs to the most consistent. The compound effect of repetition. A single day rarely changes a life. A single workout. A single study session. A single productive morning. Their impact appears small, but repetition changes everything. The top performers understand that excellence emerges from repetition, not intensity. Repeated action creates skill. Repeated effort creates momentum. Repeated discipline creates identity. The process compounds. And compounding produces extraordinary outcomes. The boring truth about success: many people search for exciting secrets, hidden techniques, advanced strategies, shortcuts. Yet the reality is often less glamorous. Success is frequently built through boring consistency. Showing up, practicing, learning, improving, repeating. The process is not always exciting. It is often repetitive. The top 1% accept this. The average person resists it. That difference explains many outcomes. Why outcomes can be dangerous: goals can inspire action, but they can also create problems. Once a goal is achieved, motivation sometimes disappears. The person loses direction because their identity was attached to the outcome, not the process. The top performers avoid this trap. Their identity is connected to continuous improvement. There is always another level of mastery, another skill to develop, another challenge to embrace. The process never ends, and because it never ends, growth continues. Becoming process-oriented: imagine two people starting a business. The first wants quick profits. The second wants to become exceptional at creating value. The first focuses on outcomes. The second focuses on mastery. Years later, who is more likely to succeed? The answer becomes obvious. Mastery creates value. Value creates opportunity. Opportunity creates rewards. The process ultimately produces the outcome. The process builds character. One of the greatest benefits of the process has nothing to do with results. It builds character, patience, discipline, humility, resilience, persistence. These qualities emerge through repeated effort, not through achievement alone. The process shapes the person, and the person ultimately creates the outcome. Why the top 1% enjoy the journey? Many people postpone happiness. I'll be happy when I succeed. I'll be happy when I achieve the goal. I'll be happy when I arrive. The top performers understand a different truth. If you cannot enjoy the journey, success will never satisfy you for long. Because every achievement eventually becomes normal. Every milestone eventually fades. The process remains. Learning to appreciate the process creates sustainable fulfillment. And sustainable fulfillment creates longevity. The identity shift. Eventually, something remarkable happens. The person stops pursuing goals merely for rewards. They begin pursuing excellence for its own sake. Improvement becomes part of identity. Growth becomes natural. The process becomes who they are. At that point, extraordinary achievement becomes far more likely. Because effort no longer feels forced. It feels aligned. The daily question: instead of asking, "How close am I to my goal?" ask, "Did I honor my process today?" This question creates focus. Because today's actions are what shape tomorrow's outcomes. The process is where power exists. Not in distant results, but in present execution. The competitive advantage. Most people become emotionally attached to outcomes. The top 1% become emotionally attached to improvement. Most people need rewards to stay engaged. The top 1% find meaning in the work itself. Most people quit when results are delayed. The top 1% continue because the process remains rewarding. That difference compounds over time. And compounding changes lives. The core truth. The fourth mental shift that separates the top 1% from everyone else is this: they fall in love with the process instead of becoming obsessed with the outcome. They understand that goals are important. But processes create goals. Results matter. But systems create results. Success is not built on occasional breakthroughs. It is built on daily execution. And daily execution becomes easier when the process itself becomes rewarding. The next discovery. Once someone becomes process-oriented, another powerful shift emerges. They stop competing with everyone else. And start competing with a far more important person. The person they were yesterday. Because the top 1% understand something most people miss, the most meaningful competition is internal. And mastering that idea unlocks a completely different level of growth. Chapter 5. Compete with yourself, not the world. One of the most exhausting games in life is trying to keep up with everyone else. Someone is always richer, smarter, more attractive, more successful, more experienced, more connected, more accomplished. No matter how much you achieve, there will always be someone ahead of you in some area. This reality creates a trap. A trap that consumes the attention of millions of people. The trap of comparison. Most people spend their lives measuring themselves against others. The top 1% make a different choice. They compete with themselves. And that mental shift changes everything. The comparison trap. Comparison is natural. Human beings have always compared themselves to others. For most of history, comparison helped people understand their place within a group. In today's world, however, comparison has become constant. Social media amplifies it. News amplifies it. Entertainment amplifies it. Everyday people are exposed to carefully selected highlights from thousands of lives. They see achievements, vacations, success stories, milestones, awards, luxury, recognition. What they rarely see are the struggles behind those outcomes. The failures, the sacrifices, the setbacks, the years of invisible effort. As a result, people compare their reality to someone else's highlight reel. And the comparison is almost always unfair. Why comparison steals progress? Comparison often shifts attention away from growth. Instead of asking, "How can I improve?" people ask, "Why am I behind?" Instead of focusing on their journey, they focus on someone else's. This creates frustration, envy, insecurity, discouragement. And none of those emotions improve performance. The top 1% understand that comparison rarely creates excellence. It usually creates distraction. The internal scoreboard. Most people live by an external scoreboard. Money, status, recognition, approval, titles, followers, awards. These measurements are visible, easy to track, easy to compare, but they can be dangerous. Because external scoreboards place control in other people's hands. The top performers develop an internal scoreboard. They measure progress differently. Did I improve? Did I learn? Did I grow? Did I honor my standards? Did I execute my process? These questions create a healthier source of motivation. Because they focus on what can actually be controlled. The only meaningful competition. Imagine two people. One spends every day comparing themselves to others. The second spends every day trying to become slightly better than yesterday. 10 years later, who is likely to experience more growth? The answer is obvious. The first person wastes energy tracking competitors. The second invests energy improving themselves. Improvement compounds. Comparison does not. This is why the most meaningful competition is internal. The person you were yesterday is the only opponent that truly matters. Why external validation is dangerous? Validation feels good. Praise feels good. Recognition feels good. There is nothing wrong with enjoying these things. The problem arises when they become necessities. People who depend on external validation become emotionally unstable. Their confidence rises when praise appears, and falls when praise disappears. The top 1% build confidence differently. They derive confidence from evidence. Evidence created through action, effort, discipline, improvement. Their confidence becomes more durable because it is rooted internally, not externally. The growth mindset advantage. People focused on comparison often become outcome-oriented. People focused on self-improvement become growth-oriented. The difference is enormous. An outcome-focused person fears mistakes. A growth-focused person welcomes learning. An outcome-focused person protects their image. A growth-focused person develops their abilities. An outcome-focused person seeks approval. A growth-focused person seeks improvement. The top performers understand that growth ultimately creates outcomes. Therefore, growth deserves the primary focus. Why envy is misunderstood? Envy is often viewed negatively. Yet envy can provide valuable information. Envy reveals desire. It points towards something you admire. The problem is that most people stop there. They become resentful, bitter, frustrated. The top performers use envy differently. Instead of asking, why do they have that? They ask, what can I learn from them? The emotion becomes fuel, not poison. And fuel creates movement. The daily improvement principle. The top 1% rarely aim for perfection. They aim for improvement. Perfection creates pressure. Improvement creates progress. Perfection often leads to procrastination. Improvement encourages action. Perfection focuses on flaws. Improvement focuses on growth. A small improvement every day appears insignificant. Yet over years it becomes extraordinary. Because improvement compounds. Why ego loves comparison? The ego enjoys comparison. Especially comparisons that make us feel superior. This creates another trap. People often compare themselves to those doing worse. The comparison provides temporary comfort. But comfort rarely produces growth. The top performers compare themselves differently. Not to feel superior. To identify opportunities for improvement. Their goal is not validation. Their goal is development. The long-term perspective. Comparison becomes less important when viewed across decades. Someone else's success does not reduce your potential. Someone else's achievement does not eliminate your opportunity. Life is not a single race with one winner. There are countless paths, countless opportunities, countless ways to create value. The top 1% understand abundance better than scarcity. They focus on building their own path rather than obsessing over someone else's. Measuring the right things. Most people measure outcomes. Top performers often measure behaviors. Instead of focusing exclusively on income, they track value creation. Instead of focusing exclusively on results, they track execution. Instead of focusing exclusively on achievements, they track consistency. These measurements encourage growth. Because behavior precedes outcomes, and behaviors can be controlled. The mirror test. At the end of each day, ask yourself, am I better than I was yesterday? Not dramatically. Not perfectly. Just slightly. Did you learn something? Improve something? Practice something? Correct something? Progress rarely arrives in giant leaps. It usually arrives through small daily victories. And those victories accumulate. Why self-competition creates freedom? Competing with yourself removes unnecessary pressure. You no longer need to match another person's timeline, another person's goals, another person's circumstances, another person's strengths. You focus on your own journey, your own growth, your own standards. This creates freedom. Because energy that was once spent comparing can now be spent improving. The identity of a learner. The top 1% often see themselves as lifelong students. No matter how much they achieve, they continue learning, continue growing, continue refining. This identity protects them from complacency. Because there is always another level, another lesson, another opportunity to improve, the focus remains on growth. And growth creates progress. The hidden secret of extraordinary people. Many people assume extraordinary individuals are driven by competition. Sometimes they are. But the deepest performers are often driven by something else. A desire to fulfill their potential. A desire to become the best version of themselves. A desire to see how far they can grow. This internal drive proves more sustainable than external comparison. Because it comes from within. Not from the world around them. The daily question, instead of asking, how do I compare to others? Ask, how am I improving compared to my past self? This question redirects attention toward growth, toward learning, toward development, toward progress, the things that actually matter. The core truth. The fifth mental shift that separates the top 1% from everyone else is this: they compete with themselves instead of constantly competing with the world. They understand that comparison creates distraction. Improvement creates progress. External validation creates dependence. Internal growth creates confidence. The goal is not to be better than everyone else. The goal is to become better than the person you were yesterday. And when that becomes your focus, growth becomes limitless. The next discovery. Once comparison loses its power, another transformation becomes possible. A person begins to view problems differently. Most people see problems as obstacles. The top 1% see them as opportunities. Because hidden inside nearly every problem is a chance to create value. And value is where extraordinary success begins. Chapter 6. Problems are opportunities in disguise. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid problems. They want fewer challenges, fewer obstacles, fewer setbacks, fewer complications. They imagine that success means reaching a point where problems disappear. But the top 1% understand a very different truth. Problems never disappear. They simply change. The person struggling to pay bills has problems. The business owner managing a large company has problems. The professional leading a team has problems. The athlete competing at the highest level has problems. Success is not the absence of problems. Success is the ability to solve bigger and more valuable problems. This mental shift fundamentally changes how a person views life. Because once problems are no longer seen as enemies, they become opportunities. And opportunities create growth. The difference between average and exceptional thinking: when average performers encounter a problem, their first reaction is often frustration. Why is this happening? Why is life so difficult? Why can't things be easier? These reactions are understandable, but they rarely create solutions. The top 1% respond differently. Their first question is often, how can this be solved? Or, what opportunity exists inside this challenge? The situation remains the same. The mindset changes. And mindset determines action. Every problem contains value. Think about every successful business in existence. At its core, it solves a problem. Transportation companies solve transportation problems. Software companies solve efficiency problems. Healthcare organizations solve health problems. Educational institutions solve knowledge problems. The greater the problem solved, the greater the potential value created. This is why successful people often become problem seekers rather than problem avoiders. They understand that problems create opportunities. And opportunities create rewards. Why most people miss opportunities? Opportunities rarely arrive looking like opportunities. They usually arrive disguised as difficulties. Extra work. Unexpected challenges. Responsibility. Complex situations. Uncertainty. Most people avoid these things. As a result, they often miss the opportunities hidden inside them. The top performers look deeper. They understand that growth frequently hides behind discomfort, and value often hides behind difficulty. The opportunity lens. Imagine two employees facing the same challenge. A difficult project. One sees stress. The other sees opportunity. The first avoids responsibility. The second embraces it. Months later, who is more likely to develop valuable skills? Who is more likely to earn trust? Who is more likely to receive opportunities? The answer becomes obvious. The challenge was identical. The interpretation was different. And interpretation shaped behavior. Problems create growth. Muscles grow through resistance. Skills grow through practice. Character grows through adversity. Confidence grows through overcoming challenges. Growth itself is often the result of solving problems. Without resistance, there is little development. Without obstacles, there is little adaptation. Without difficulty, there is little improvement. The very things people try to avoid often contain the growth they seek. The responsibility advantage. Top performers frequently volunteer for responsibility. Not because responsibility is easy. Because responsibility creates opportunity. Every responsibility develops competence. Every competence creates value. Every value creates leverage. Most people avoid responsibility because it feels burdensome. The top 1% seek it because it accelerates growth. They understand that responsibility is often the fastest path to opportunity. Why complaining is expensive. Complaining feels productive, but it rarely is. Complaints focus attention on the problem. Solutions focus attention on progress. Every minute spent complaining is a minute not spent improving. This does not mean ignoring difficulties. It means refusing to become trapped by them. The top performers acknowledge problems quickly, then move toward solutions. Because solutions create movement, and movement creates results. The scarcity mindset. People who see problems as obstacles often operate from scarcity. They believe opportunities are limited. Resources are limited. Success is limited. As a result, challenges feel threatening. The top 1% tend to think differently. They see possibilities, alternatives, creative solutions, new paths. This abundance-oriented perspective encourages action. Because opportunity appears larger than the obstacle. Reframing adversity. One of the most powerful mental skills is reframing. The ability to view the same situation differently. A rejection becomes feedback. A setback becomes education. A challenge becomes training. A problem becomes an opportunity. The event remains unchanged. The meaning changes. And meaning influences behavior. People rarely respond to reality itself. They respond to their interpretation of reality. Why difficulty creates value. Easy things are rarely valuable. Anyone can do them. Difficult things create separation. Few people are willing to endure discomfort. Few people are willing to solve complex problems. Few people are willing to persist through obstacles. As a result, difficulty often creates opportunity. The greater the challenge solved, the greater the value generated. This principle appears repeatedly throughout life. The entrepreneur's perspective. Entrepreneurs often succeed because they think differently about problems. Where others see inconvenience, they see possibility. Where others see frustration, they see demand. Where others see obstacles, they see markets. Many of the world's most successful companies began because someone noticed a problem and decided to solve it. This mindset extends beyond business. It applies to every area of life. The ability to see opportunity where others see obstacles creates a powerful advantage. The growth question. Whenever a challenge appears, ask, what is this problem trying to teach me? This question immediately shifts perspective. Instead of becoming a victim of circumstances, you become a student of circumstances. The challenge transforms into a lesson. And lessons create growth. Why resilience matters. Life guarantees difficulty. No amount of planning can eliminate every challenge. The people who thrive are not those who avoid adversity. They are those who develop resilience. Resilience is the ability to continue despite obstacles. To adapt despite setbacks. To learn despite failure. And resilience grows through experience. Every challenge overcome strengthens it. The long-term advantage. Problems often appear negative in the short term. But many prove valuable in the long term. A failed project teaches a critical lesson. A rejection creates a better opportunity. A setback develops resilience. A challenge reveals hidden strengths. Looking backward, many people discover that their greatest growth emerged from their greatest difficulties. The obstacle became the teacher. The value creation formula. A simple truth exists in nearly every field. The more value you create, the more opportunities you receive. And value is often created through solving problems. This is why top performers actively look for problems. Not because they enjoy difficulty. Because they understand the relationship between problems and value. The ability to solve meaningful problems becomes one of the most valuable skills in the world. The daily practice. Each day, challenges will appear. Some small, some significant. The question is not whether problems will exist. The question is how you will interpret them. Will they become excuses or opportunities? Will they create frustration or growth? The choice shapes the outcome. The competitive edge: most people see obstacles and stop. The top 1% see obstacles and think. Most people focus on difficulties. The top 1% focus on possibilities. Most people ask, why is this happening? The top 1% ask, what can I do with this? That difference compounds over time. And compounding creates extraordinary results. The core truth. The sixth mental shift that separates the top 1% from everyone else is this: they see problems as opportunities in disguise. They understand that challenges create growth. Responsibility creates opportunity. Difficulty creates value. And every obstacle contains lessons for those willing to look. The world rewards people who solve problems. Therefore, the ability to embrace problems becomes one of the greatest competitive advantages a person can develop. The next discovery. Once someone begins seeing opportunities inside problems, another powerful shift occurs. They stop focusing on what they can get and start focusing on what they can give. Because the top 1% understand a principle that most people overlook: the people who create the most value eventually receive the greatest rewards. And that principle changes everything. Chapter 7. Focus on creating value, not chasing rewards. Most people spend their lives asking one question: what can I get? What can I earn? What can I receive? What can I gain? What can I achieve? At first glance, these questions seem reasonable. Everyone wants success, financial security, recognition, opportunity, freedom. There is nothing wrong with pursuing these things. The problem is that most people focus on rewards before they focus on value. The top 1% reverse the equation. They ask a different question: what value can I create? And this mental shift changes everything. Because rewards are usually the consequence of value, not the cause of it. The universal principle: look closely at almost any form of success. A business earns revenue because it creates value. An employee earns promotions because they create value. A teacher earns respect because they create value. A writer gains readers because they create value. An entrepreneur builds wealth because they create value. The principle remains the same. The marketplace rewards value. The world rewards value. People reward value. Those who consistently create it become difficult to ignore. Why most people get stuck? Many people focus on outcomes without understanding the mechanism that produces them. They want more money. But they rarely ask how to become more valuable. They want more opportunities. But they rarely ask how to contribute more. They want more recognition. But they rarely ask how to help more people. As a result, they chase rewards directly. The top 1% understand that rewards are often indirect. The fastest path to receiving more is frequently giving more. The value equation. Imagine two individuals. One constantly asks, what do I deserve? The other asks, how can I become more useful? 10 years later, who is likely to have created greater opportunities? The answer is obvious. Usefulness creates demand. Demand creates opportunity. Opportunity creates rewards. The person focused on value gains leverage over time. Because the world naturally seeks solutions. Why skills matter. Value is often connected to skills. The more problems you can solve, the more value you can create. The more value you create, the more opportunities tend to appear. This is why top performers become obsessed with learning. Not because learning feels productive. Because learning increases their ability to contribute. Every new skill expands their capacity to create value. And expanded value increases future possibilities. The difference between consumption and creation: most people spend more time consuming than creating. consuming information, consuming entertainment, consuming content, consuming opinions. The top 1% consume strategically, but they create relentlessly. They write, build, teach, lead, design, solve, innovate, create. Creation changes the relationship between effort and reward. Consumers primarily absorb value. Creators generate it. And generators of value become increasingly valuable themselves. The service mindset. One of the most powerful shifts in thinking is moving from self-centered goals to service-centered goals. This does not mean ignoring personal ambition. It means understanding how ambition works. The people who contribute the most often receive the most. The people who solve the most problems often earn the most. The people who help the most often influence the most. Service and success are frequently connected. Not because the world is perfectly fair, but because value creation attracts opportunity. Why wealth follows value. Many people chase wealth directly. The top performers often focus on becoming valuable. This distinction is important. Money is an exchange. People exchange money for solutions, products, services, expertise, convenience, results. The greater the value provided, the greater the potential reward. This is why long-term wealth is often built through value creation rather than value extraction. The reputation advantage. Value creates reputation, and reputation compounds. When people consistently solve problems, others notice. Trust increases. Credibility increases. Opportunities increase. Networks expand. Influence grows. Reputation becomes an asset built through repeated value creation. And unlike many resources, reputation can continue generating opportunities for years. Why generosity is strategic. Some people view generosity as weakness. The top 1% often understand its power. Sharing knowledge, helping others, providing solutions, offering support, creating opportunities. These actions build relationships. Relationships create trust. Trust creates influence. Influence creates opportunity. Generosity is not merely moral. It is often practical. Because contribution tends to return value over time. The long-term perspective. People who chase rewards often become impatient. People who create value become patient. They understand that value compounds. A helpful article may influence someone years later. A useful skill may create opportunities decades later. A meaningful relationship may open unexpected doors. Value continues working long after it is created. This long-term perspective encourages consistency. Because immediate rewards become less important than lasting contribution. The value creator identity. Eventually, something interesting happens. The top performers stop thinking primarily about success. They start thinking about contribution. Not because they lack ambition. Because contribution becomes the source of success. Their identity shifts. From consumer to creator. From taker to giver. From seeker of rewards to creator of value. And that identity transforms behavior. Why value creates confidence. Many people seek confidence directly. But confidence often emerges indirectly. When you solve problems, confidence grows. When you help people, confidence grows. When you create value, confidence grows. Because confidence is built on evidence. And value creation generates evidence. Evidence that you are capable, useful, competent, effective. This creates a strong and stable form of self-belief. The marketplace test. Imagine entering any room and asking, "How can I be useful here?" The question immediately changes your focus. Attention shifts away from insecurity, away from comparison, away from self-consciousness, toward contribution, toward service, toward value. And value is where opportunities often begin. Why top performers become indispensable. The top 1% strive to become difficult to replace. Not through politics. Not through manipulation. But through value. They solve problems consistently. produce results consistently, improve consistently, contribute consistently. As a result, their presence becomes valuable, and valuable people attract opportunities. This is one reason exceptional performers continue advancing. Their value becomes impossible to ignore. The daily question. At the start of each day, ask, how can I create more value today than I did yesterday? The answer does not need to be dramatic. A better conversation, a better solution, a better idea, a better effort. Small increases in value compound over time, and compounding creates extraordinary outcomes. The hidden secret. Many people spend years chasing success, only to discover that success arrives when they stop chasing it directly. When they focus instead on solving problems, helping people, creating value, improving skills, contributing meaningfully, success often follows, not because it was pursued, because it was earned. The competitive advantage. Most people focus on rewards. The top 1% focus on value. Most people ask, what can I get? The top 1% ask, what can I contribute? Most people chase opportunities. The top 1% create them. And the difference grows larger with time. Because value compounds. The core truth. The seventh mental shift that separates the top 1% from everyone else is this: they focus on creating value instead of chasing rewards. They understand that rewards are outcomes. Value is the cause. Money follows value. Influence follows value. Opportunity follows value. Trust follows value. The people who consistently create value become magnets for success because they make themselves useful to the world around them. And usefulness is one of the most valuable assets a person can possess. The next discovery. Once someone becomes focused on value creation, another powerful realization emerges. Time becomes more important than money. Because the top 1% understand something most people learn too late, money lost can often be recovered. Time lost never can. And this shift dramatically changes how they live, work, and make decisions. Chapter 8. Protect your time like your life depends on it. Every human being receives the same daily gift. 24 hours. No one gets more. No one gets less. The billionaire, the athlete, the entrepreneur, the artist, the student, the executive, the laborer. Everyone begins the day with the exact same amount of time. Yet some people build extraordinary lives while others remain trapped in mediocrity. Why? Because the difference is not time itself. It is how time is valued. The top 1% understand something most people never fully grasp. Time is more valuable than money. Money can be lost and earned again. Time can only be spent. Once it is gone forever. This realization changes everything. The invisible currency. Most people treat money carefully. They track expenses, compare prices, look for savings, protect investments, but they waste time freely. Hours disappear scrolling, watching, complaining, delaying, avoiding, distracting themselves, without realizing that time is the more valuable currency. Money can return. Time never does. The top 1% become extremely protective of their time because they understand its true value. The cost of a day. Imagine someone handed you $86,400 every morning. At midnight, whatever remained disappeared. No carryover. No saving. No recovery. You would probably spend that money carefully. Yet everyday life gives you something even more valuable. 86,400 seconds. And most people spend them without awareness. The top performers understand that how they spend these seconds determines the quality of their future. Why attention matters. Time and attention are connected. You cannot invest time effectively if attention is constantly fragmented. This is one reason modern life feels overwhelming. Notifications, messages, social media, news, entertainment, advertisements. Distractions compete endlessly for attention. The average person reacts. The top 1% choose. This distinction is powerful, because attention determines where energy flows, and energy determines results. The focus advantage focus has become a superpower. Not because it is complicated, because it is increasingly rare. Most people divide their attention across dozens of tasks. The top performers concentrate deeply on what matters most. This allows them to produce more value in less time. The quality of attention often determines the quality of output. And focused attention creates extraordinary leverage. Activity versus progress. Many people confuse being busy with being productive. They answer emails, attend meetings, handle minor tasks, react to problems, stay occupied. Yet little meaningful progress occurs. The top 1% ask a different question. Is this moving me closer to my most important goals? This question separates activity from progress. Because not all effort is equal. Some actions create enormous value. Others merely create the illusion of productivity. The power of priorities. The word priority originally had no plural form. It referred to the single most important thing. Today people often claim to have 10 priorities. In reality, that usually means they have none. The top performers identify what matters most, then protect it. They understand that every yes is also a no. Time spent on one thing cannot be spent elsewhere. This awareness creates intentional decision making. Why saying no is difficult? Many people struggle to say no. They fear disappointing others, missing opportunities, appearing selfish, creating conflict. As a result, they overcommit. Their schedules become crowded. Their focus becomes diluted. Their progress slows. The top 1% recognize that every commitment carries a cost. Therefore, they become selective. Not because they do not care. Because they do. They care deeply about where their time goes. The time audit. One of the most revealing exercises is tracking time honestly. Most people believe they know how they spend their days. Often they do not. Small distractions accumulate. Minutes become hours. Hours become weeks. Weeks become years. A simple audit frequently reveals surprising truths. Time is rarely lost all at once. It disappears gradually. Through small choices repeated consistently. The compounding effect of time. Just as money compounds, time compounds. An hour invested in learning each day may seem insignificant. Years later it becomes expertise. An hour invested in health each day may seem small. Years later it becomes vitality. An hour invested in relationships each day may seem ordinary. Years later it becomes deep connection. Time compounds according to how it is invested. The top performers understand this deeply, which is why they guard it carefully. The myth of finding time. People often say, I need to find time. But time is not lost. It is allocated. The question is not whether time exists. The question is where it is going. Everyone has 24 hours. The difference lies in priorities. The top 1% rarely wait until they have free time. They schedule what matters. Because what gets scheduled gets done. Deep work versus shallow work. Not all work has equal value. Some activities create disproportionate results. Others create minimal impact. The top performers spend more time on deep work. Thinking, creating, learning, strategizing, solving important problems. These activities often require concentration. And concentration requires protection. The average person allows interruptions. The top performer protects focus. Because focus multiplies effectiveness. The future cost of distractions seem harmless. A few minutes here. A few minutes there. Yet distractions create hidden costs. Lost momentum. Reduced creativity. Weaker focus. Delayed progress. The damage is often invisible because it accumulates gradually. The top 1% understand that distraction is not merely a nuisance. It is a thief, stealing opportunities that could have existed. Why successful people value simplicity? As people become more successful, many simplify. Not because they lack options. Because simplicity protects attention. Too many commitments create complexity. Too many choices create fatigue. Too many distractions create inefficiency. The top performers often remove unnecessary obligations. Not to do less. To do what matters better. The legacy perspective. Imagine looking back on your life decades from now. What will matter? The hours spent worrying, scrolling, avoiding, complaining? Probably not. What will matter are the moments invested in growth, relationships, contribution, meaningful work, personal development. Time gains value when connected to purpose. And purpose creates direction. The time question. A powerful question to ask regularly is this the highest value use of my time right now? This question creates awareness. Awareness creates intentionality. Intentionality creates results. The answer may not always be perfect. But asking the question changes behavior. And behavior shapes the future. Why time creates freedom? Ironically, people who manage time well often experience greater freedom, not less. Because intentional use of time creates options. Progress creates opportunities. Opportunities create flexibility. Flexibility creates freedom. Freedom is often the result of disciplined time management, not the absence of it. The top 1% perspective. The top performers do not see time as something to spend. They see it as something to invest. Every hour becomes a decision. An investment in growth, relationships, skills, health, contribution, purpose. They understand that the future is built through today's investments. And time is the most important investment of all. The core truth. The eighth mental shift that separates the top 1% from everyone else is this: they protect their time because they understand its true value. They know that attention creates focus. Focus creates progress. Progress creates opportunity. And opportunity creates freedom. Money can be recovered. Lost time cannot. Therefore, they treat time as one of their most precious resources. And that mindset creates extraordinary leverage over a lifetime. The next discovery. Once someone begins valuing time properly, another powerful shift emerges. They stop seeking comfort and start seeking growth. Because the top 1% understand a truth that most people spend years resisting. The life you want exists beyond the comfort zone you refuse to leave. And embracing discomfort changes everything. Chapter 9. Choose growth over comfort. Human beings are naturally drawn toward comfort. Comfort feels safe, predictable, familiar, pleasant. It reduces uncertainty, reduces stress, reduces risk. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes sense. For thousands of years, survival depended on conserving energy and avoiding danger. The human brain evolved to keep us safe, not necessarily to make us exceptional. This creates a challenge. The very instincts that once protected us can now limit us. Because growth rarely happens inside comfort. Growth happens at the edge of what feels familiar. And this is where the top 1% think differently. While most people seek comfort, they seek growth. And that mental shift changes everything. The comfort zone myth. Many people believe the comfort zone is a place of safety. In the short term, it is. In the long term, it often becomes a prison. Inside the comfort zone, little changes. Skills remain the same. Confidence remains the same. Opportunities remain the same. Life becomes predictable. Predictability feels secure, but it also limits expansion. The comfort zone protects current identity. Growth requires creating a new one. Why discomfort is necessary? Every meaningful achievement involves discomfort. Learning a new skill is uncomfortable. Starting a business is uncomfortable. Having difficult conversations is uncomfortable. Public speaking is uncomfortable. Leadership is uncomfortable. Change itself is uncomfortable. Many people interpret discomfort as a sign they should stop. The top 1% interpret discomfort differently. They see it as evidence of growth. Not always, but often. The presence of discomfort does not automatically mean danger. Sometimes it means development. The muscle principle: consider how muscles grow. Growth requires resistance. Without resistance, strength does not increase. The same principle applies psychologically. Confidence grows through challenge. Resilience grows through adversity. Discipline grows through effort. Character grows through responsibility. Without resistance, growth remains limited. The very thing people avoid often contains the improvement they desire. The fear barrier. Most comfort zones are guarded by fear. Fear of failure. Fear of embarrassment. Fear of rejection. Fear of uncertainty. Fear of judgment. These fears feel real, because they are real. But the top performers understand something important. Fear is often a signal, not a stop sign. It points toward areas of potential growth. The goal is not eliminating fear. The goal is acting despite it. Why courage is misunderstood: many people believe courageous individuals feel no fear. This is rarely true. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is action despite fear. The entrepreneur feels fear. The leader feels fear. The athlete feels fear. The performer feels fear. The difference is that they move forward anyway. Fear remains present, but it no longer controls behavior. The cost of staying comfortable: comfort always carries a price. The price is often invisible. Opportunities missed. Skills undeveloped. Potential unrealized. Experiences never pursued. The danger is that comfort feels harmless. There is no immediate consequence. The cost appears slowly. Over months. Years. Decades. Eventually people realize they have protected comfort at the expense of growth. And that realization often becomes regret. The growth zone. Between comfort and panic lies a powerful space. The growth zone. Not so easy that nothing changes. Not so overwhelming that progress becomes impossible. Just challenging enough to encourage adaptation. The top 1% spend much of their lives here. They intentionally seek challenges, not because they enjoy suffering, because they understand the relationship between challenge and development. Growth requires stretching, and stretching requires discomfort. Why uncertainty creates opportunity? Most people dislike uncertainty. The future feels unclear. Outcomes feel unpredictable. Risks feel uncomfortable. Yet uncertainty is where opportunity lives. If outcomes were guaranteed, everyone would pursue them. The reason opportunity exists is because uncertainty exists. The top performers learn to tolerate uncertainty. While others wait for certainty, they take action. And action creates momentum. The beginner's advantage: many people avoid being beginners. They dislike looking inexperienced. They dislike making mistakes. They dislike feeling incompetent. As a result, they remain trapped in familiar activities. The top 1% embrace being beginners. They understand that every expert once started at zero. Every master was once awkward. Every professional was once inexperienced. Temporary discomfort becomes acceptable because growth becomes the priority. The expansion principle. Each time you leave your comfort zone, it expands. What once felt difficult becomes normal. What once felt intimidating becomes manageable. What once felt impossible becomes routine. Confidence grows similarly. Not through thinking, through action. Each challenge completed provides evidence. Evidence creates belief. Belief creates confidence. The cycle reinforces itself. Why risk is necessary? No meaningful life is completely risk-free. Every major opportunity carries uncertainty. Changing careers, starting a business, building relationships, pursuing ambitious goals, all involve risk. Most people focus on the risk of action. The top performers also consider the risk of inaction. What happens if nothing changes? What opportunities disappear? What potential remains unrealized? Sometimes the greatest risk is remaining exactly where you are. The temporary pain principle. Growth often requires temporary pain. Discipline requires temporary discomfort. Learning requires temporary frustration. Improvement requires temporary struggle. Most people focus on the temporary pain. The top 1% focus on the long-term reward. They understand that short-term discomfort often creates long-term freedom, while short-term comfort often creates long-term limitations. The identity transformation. At some point, growth becomes part of identity. The person stops asking, "How can I stay comfortable?" and starts asking, "How can I keep growing?" Challenges become attractive. Learning becomes exciting. Progress becomes rewarding. Discomfort loses much of its power, because it becomes associated with expansion rather than danger. The daily challenge habit. One habit common among high performers is intentionally doing difficult things. Not extreme things. Just difficult things. Having the conversation. Making the call. Learning the skill. Taking the risk. Facing the challenge. These actions strengthen courage, and courage compounds. Just like any other skill. The regret test. Imagine yourself 20 years in the future. Looking back. What will create more regret? Trying and failing, or never trying at all? For many people, the answer becomes obvious. Failures eventually become stories, lessons, experiences. But opportunities ignored often become lasting regrets. The top performers understand this, which is why they are willing to endure temporary discomfort. The competitive advantage. Most people move toward comfort. The top 1% move toward growth. Most people avoid difficult conversations. The top 1% have them. Most people avoid uncertainty. The top 1% learn to navigate it. Most people avoid challenges. The top 1% embrace them. This creates a significant advantage over time, because growth compounds, and comfort does not. The core truth. The ninth mental shift that separates the top 1% from everyone else is this: they consistently choose growth over comfort. They understand that discomfort is often the price of improvement, that uncertainty is often the doorway to opportunity, and that courage is built through action, not waiting. The life they desire exists beyond their current limitations. Therefore, they repeatedly step beyond what feels familiar, and each step expands what becomes possible. The final discovery. All the mental shifts explored so far lead to one ultimate transformation. A transformation that determines whether success becomes temporary or lasting. Because the top 1% eventually realize something profound: success is not something you achieve. It is someone you become. And understanding that truth changes everything. Chapter 10. Become the person, and the results will follow. Throughout this book, we have explored the mental shifts that separate the top 1% from everyone else. We examined responsibility, long-term thinking, failure, process, self-competition, problem-solving, value creation, time management, growth over comfort. Each shift is powerful on its own, but beneath all of them lies a deeper truth. A truth that explains why some people achieve lasting success while others repeatedly lose it. The truth is this: success is not something you get. Success is someone you become. This is the final mental shift, and it may be the most important one of all. The great misunderstanding: most people believe success will change them. They think, when I make more money, I'll feel confident. When I get the promotion, I'll become successful. When I achieve the goal, everything will change. This way of thinking places success in the future. It treats success as an event, a destination, a reward. But the top 1% understands something different. Results do not create identity. Identity creates results. The person comes first. The outcome comes second. Why some people lose success. Have you ever noticed how some people achieve success and then lose it? Athletes go broke. Businesses collapse. Talented individuals waste opportunities. People rise quickly and fall just as quickly. Why? Because they achieved outcomes before developing the identity required to sustain them. The result arrived. The person did not. And eventually reality returned to match identity. This is why lasting success requires internal transformation, not just external achievement. The identity principle: every action you take is a vote. A vote for the type of person you are becoming. When you exercise, you vote for being healthy. When you study, you vote for being knowledgeable. When you keep your word, you vote for being trustworthy. When you show discipline, you vote for being reliable. These votes accumulate. And eventually they form identity. Identity is not created in a moment. It is created through repetition. The person behind the goal: imagine two people with the same goal. Both want to write a book. The first focuses entirely on finishing the book. The second focuses on becoming a writer. The first seeks an outcome. The second develops an identity. Who is more likely to continue writing after the first book? Who is more likely to improve? Who is more likely to build a meaningful body of work? The answer is obvious. Because identity creates consistency, and consistency creates results. The hidden power of standards: identity and standards are closely connected. Your standards reflect who you believe you are. A person who sees themselves as disciplined maintains different standards than someone who sees themselves as careless. A person who sees themselves as a leader behaves differently than someone who sees themselves as a victim. Identity influences expectations. Expectations influence behavior. Behavior influences outcomes. The cycle becomes self-reinforcing. Why goals alone are not enough? Goals are valuable. They provide direction, focus, purpose. But goals have limitations. Once a goal is achieved, motivation can disappear. Identity does not disappear. A goal says, I want to run a marathon. Identity says, I am a runner. A goal says, I want to start a business. Identity says, I am an entrepreneur. A goal says, I want to become fit. Identity says, I am someone who takes care of my health. Identity creates permanence. Goals create milestones. Becoming before having. Most people believe life works like this. Have right pointing arrow, do right pointing arrow, become. If I have success, I'll do great things and become confident. The top 1% reverse the sequence. Become right pointing arrow, do right pointing arrow, have first become the person. Then do the actions. Then receive the results. This shift changes everything, because it places power in the present. You do not need to wait for success to act like a successful person. You can start today. The daily identity question. One of the most powerful questions you can ask yourself is, what would the person I want to become do in this situation? This question immediately changes perspective. Faced with a difficult choice, ask, what would a disciplined person do? What would a leader do? What would a confident person do? What would a healthy person do? What would an excellent person do? The answer usually becomes clear. And repeated answers create identity. Why small actions matter. People often underestimate small actions. A single decision seems insignificant. One workout. One page. One conversation. 1 hour of focused work. One act of discipline. Yet identity is built from these moments. Not dramatic breakthroughs. Daily actions are identity-building events. Every choice either strengthens or weakens the person you are becoming. The compound effect of identity. Identity compounds just like money. A small improvement repeated consistently creates dramatic change over time. One day of discipline changes little. A decade of discipline changes everything. One act of courage changes little. Years of courageous action transform a life. Identity compounds because behavior compounds. And behavior follows belief. Stop chasing results. This may sound strange, but one of the fastest ways to improve results is to stop obsessing over them. Instead, Focus on becoming the kind of person capable of producing those results. Do not chase confidence. Become competent. Do not chase success. Become valuable. Do not chase respect. Become trustworthy. Do not chase opportunities. Become prepared. Results often arrive naturally when identity aligns with them. The mirror test. Every evening, imagine standing in front of a mirror and asking, did my actions today match the person I want to become? Not perfectly. No one is perfect, but honestly. Did your actions move you closer or further away? This simple question creates awareness, and awareness creates change. The top 1% secret. People often search for hidden secrets, complex strategies, advanced techniques, special advantages. Yet the biggest secret is surprisingly simple. The top 1% focus on becoming before achieving. They build character before recognition, discipline before rewards, value before wealth, responsibility before authority, identity before results. And because they focus on the cause, the effects eventually follow. The legacy question. At the end of life, most achievements fade. Titles disappear. Money changes hands. Awards gather dust. What remains is the person you became. Your character. Your impact. Your contribution. Your example. The quality of a life is ultimately determined less by what was accumulated and more by who was created. The final mental shift. The top 1% eventually realize something that changes their entire approach to life. They stop asking, what do I want to achieve? And start asking, who do I need to become? That question leads to different habits, different standards, different choices, different outcomes. Because becoming is more powerful than achieving. Achievement is temporary. Identity is lasting. The final truth. The mental shift that separates the top 1% from everyone else is not a single idea. It is a collection of perspectives. Responsibility over blame. Long-term thinking over short-term thinking. Learning over fear of failure. Process over outcomes. Self-improvement over comparison. Opportunity over obstacles. Value creation over reward chasing. Time investment over time wasting. Growth over comfort. Identity over achievement. Together, these shifts create a fundamentally different way of living. A fundamentally different way of thinking. And ultimately, a fundamentally different life. The top 1% are not necessarily smarter, luckier, or more talented. They simply think differently. And because they think differently, they act differently. Because they act differently, they become different. And because they become different, they achieve different results. Everything begins with a mental shift. And the next one could change your life.